What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're gonna break down how Onslaught, a horde guild, actually broke both world records in both of the raids in one night. They set a brand new world record speed run in Blackwing Lair, which came out to be 20 minutes and 25 seconds. And then they also went on to set the actual brand new world record speed for clearing MC without even really planning to do that after the actual normal speed run. They just decided to go in there and then ended up breaking the record for that as well. So today we're going to spend most of our time breaking down exactly how they set the new world record for Blackwing Lair and things that you can employ in your own raids and your own speed runs that'll help you if you're trying to get a really incredibly fast time. We're also going to talk a bit about the controversy at the beginning with their runs. I do have to say initially though, congratulations to Onslaught. It is amazing to see some horde on top. Hopefully they keep their record for a little bit at least. And today also I have to mention we will be using clips from SalvDali's stream, so I will link his Twitch, of course, in the description below. So before we get into it, let's actually watch what happened on the actual speedrun they were running the week before when they were going for their records then. And this is just one of the greatest clips of all time. Look how far. He's just looking at his consumes, man. That is just the most unfortunate thing as everyone turns around and calls him out on it. And the face, dude. Wait, let me hide myself. Ugh. Pure defeat. But nevertheless, they redeemed themselves by setting both world records. This is just one of the funniest things that could have happened and the most unfortunate mistakes. But there are actually ways that they could have improved their speedrun that they do that we're going to break down tonight. It's ever so slight, and once you're getting at this particular speed, the amount of min-maxing and tiny improvements you can do is really small. So let's hop right into it. As usual, my name is Sarth. Welcome to the channel. If you like this sort of content, please like and subscribe and leave a comment with what you want me to cover next. Let's do this. Alright, let's start things off by actually going over the controversy that was brought up about their world record speedrun. The biggest two things that are used here is that in Onslaught, in their speedrun, they actually used a mechanic where you can pop a flask, and when you do pop a flask, you gain an extra 2,000 mana. So if you wait until you're almost at 0 mana and click off your flask and click on a new one, and there's no actual CD really for this, then you can instantly get another 2,000 mana. So they pretty much had infinite mana by chain popping flasks of distilled wisdom. The controversy here is some people were talking about this being an abuse of a mechanic, but I don't really think it is. It's just a clever use of game mechanics, and it's something that's really expensive. It's gonna change how speedruns are done from any of the most competitive guilds. And if we break down any of the older speedruns, actually, a lot of people have used chain popping flasks. Like somebody actually in this post talks briefly about how Progress in their initial speedrun, their first world record for this, actually used a similar mechanic where some people were using multiple flasks. That is the first thing that's usually brought up right now. There is a little bit of drama there, but not really, because I think it's almost universally understood that this was just clever for them to do, and it works out really well for them to have infinite mana. As Alliance, they have Paladins, and you have a lot better mana management than Horde, so this is something that kind of evens the playing field a bit. The other thing, the thing that could actually be a little bit even more controversial, is that they actually checked all of the raid IDs before entering and before deciding to use that BWL raid ID to check the wormkins to see if any of them were the brown wormkin. And that's the one that makes sure that your tank is spinning. And so if your tank is spinning, you can't really cleave them all down and stack them, or else he's just gonna kill all of the melee. So they use a weak aura, apparently, as well as combining Blade of Eternal Darkness from Maradon to go in on a priest and have them chain mind vision, where apparently mind vision can proc of the weapon, and that'll actually cause combat for a lot of targets around there. But it also has this weak aura which let them see what the worm guards were. So they used a raid ID that apparently didn't have any of the brown ones. We're gonna actually break it all down for you guys. I just wanted to let you know beforehand that these are the things that are a little bit controversial, and these are the things that have been brought up about the raid. Nevertheless, they had one of the cleanest raids of all time. This is the world record speed, and there's even little things they could have done to improve, but this is the world record speed. Congratulations to Onslaught. Let's get right into it now. As we get ready to start, the first thing you might notice is the raid composition. This is obviously a melee heavy composition and a warrior heavy composition, where they have 20 warriors, 5 rogues, 2 priests, 7 shamans, 2 hunters, 1 warlock, and 2 mages. And of course, 1 druid, fairy fire, clutch. Another thing, as they're getting started, you can actually see that the buffs that their melee use. And they actually use a lot of buffs specifically pertaining towards keeping themselves alive. And that is the cluster rocket and the smitten buff. They use these, which is an extra 450 health. Instead of using the strength juju, they are using different buffs that actually give them health, also elixir of fortitude. He has the spell power buff, slipkick savvy, which is going to actually just get pushed off anyway, so he's not really worried about that. He used a couple different buffs that are going to just get pushed off no matter what, so he just kind of bases his buffs around that, as well as all of the melee probably does pretty much the same thing. He also has the Dark Desire buff, and this is from the Valentine's Day event, which gives 2% extra hit for 1 hour. This is just really clutch, and you can actually change up a little bit of your itemization if you need to, because if you go over hit cap, especially for warriors, then you're not too worried about anything, because you're just going to be heroic strike queuing the entire time. So you can go for a little bit more of a DPS itemization than a hit itemization. The last thing I want to point out to you guys before we get into the actual raid is that they have the 15-minute battle shout buff, which pretty much every speedrun has nowadays, and you get this from turning in the Diamond Flask quest. Just have everyone in your raid there, all stacked on top of each other. This is usually the last buff you get. You'll get this one. Sometimes you'll get Ubers first and then get this one, and it is just extremely powerful. You want it up as long as possible. I'm going to skip forward really fast because Razor Gore ad phase doesn't really mean too much, but there's something that they use which is very, very smart, and I think everybody doing a speedrun should do this as well. And they actually get 5 Sunders up on the boss Razor Gore before he's actually targetable to actually DPS him. One of their orb controllers drops the boss for a second. They get all of their Sunders up on the boss before they kill the last egg, and so you'll see now, look, he has 5 Sunders up on him, Fairy Fire, Curse of Recklessness. Obviously, there's also the Amp Magic up there. And soon into the fight, they have their improved Expose Armor Rogue, which is another thing I'm going to be making a video about, guys, this week, which is the Expose Armor Rogue and how much of a DPS increase it is for your speedruns and why you want to be running one. But you'll see the boss already has 5 Sunders up. The only mistake that could be made here is that right as you start DPSing the boss, he actually a split second later will heal himself. So watch the boss. There's a full global, he got brought down to 83% health, and then the boss just heals himself. That's just nothing you can do about it. But as a warrior, you wouldn't want to waste a global here, which Salv does, and he actually talks about in his stream. But he uses a global here, and as a warrior, you wouldn't want to waste a global here because you would just want to DPS as much as possible right after the boss heals. Rogues, it's a little bit different because you can build combo points and get your Slice and Dice up if you hadn't already stacked Slice and Dice, which you should have done already. So here, they absolutely blow up this boss. They are not using any cooldowns, and cooldown usage is one of the most important things in all of a speed raid. It's knowing which fights you're using cooldowns for, already being fully prepped for it. One thing I guess I missed mentioning is they actually did a lot of runs, practice runs of this speed run on the PTR. From some sources, I'm hearing that they did upwards of 30 runs on the PTR practicing this speed run. And they actually called the speedrun off one night and pushed it back a night just to make sure they were fully ready. And then also did a pre-raid meeting that took them 3 hours. So they started raid 3 hours late. And that's nothing negative whatsoever. That's just going to show that if you want to perform at this level, you absolutely need to be as prepared as possible. Their tank is going to use recklessness to make sure that he has as much aggro as possible, and their tanks actually do an incredible job of having more aggro than anyone else, or more threat than anyone else. Looking at Krilton's cooldowns or buffs, you can see that he has recklessness up, which is exactly where all of your tanks in every speedrun is going to use recklessness. They're going to use recklessness on Vale to make sure that you can pump DPS as much as possible, and they can build as much threat as possible. Looking at his cast as well, he actually uses Heroic Strike more often than Bloodthirst. He actually only uses 2 Bloodthirst, but gets some very good Heroic Strikes in there, as well as some Revenge and Sunder Armors to just pump as much threat. And he gets a really insane crit percentage. Look at this, 93.3 crit percentage on his Heroic Strikes. This is actually nuts. So they had beautiful, beautiful RNG on this fight for Krilton, where nobody had a chance of catching him on threat. You're going to notice right before the boss is targetable, Salv will use his Diamond Flask and all of their warriors will use Diamond Flask. Krilton's using all of his cooldowns right here, recklessnessing and then getting into defensive stance, and all of the DPS instantly goes ham. The reason for this is Krilton is so far ahead on threat that nobody's worried about having to lip at all during this fight. He is just destroying the threat per second. And they're still going to have Diamond Flask up for the next pull. They're instantly moving as well. They already have a mage up top that has pre-casted a portal for anybody that got Burning Adrenaline, who they can take Burning Adrenaline to Undercity because it's a lot safer than Orgrimmar and Thunderbluff to not get dispelled or anything. They're going to drop group, get summoned back, and get back into the raid. They've instantly pulled this Dragonkin pack and they pulled it back to themselves. Unfortunately, the actual casters didn't decide to move with the rest of the Dragonkins because they didn't get fully LOS'd right away, which is going to cost them a couple seconds because they can't just full cleave everything down there. You also can see that Salv has put on his BRE, so a lot of warriors will put on their BRE for this cleave phase because moving into this next room, the suppression room, cleave is very important, and killing Wormkins or Dragonkins is extremely important. Those are what wreck the raids. Those absolutely are what wreck the raids. They also, I missed this for a second, they use speed pots right after Vale. So they save their potions so they can use speed pots or swiftness potions right after Vale, just to increase the speed of everyone in the raid. So they are trying to cut off as much time as humanly possible. After they kill these Wormkins, you can see that all of the rogues have already started moving, and they're actually going to mark themselves. They are already sprinting and moving forward as fast as possible so that they can add as much speed as possible. They're also putting on their rocket boots just to speed up this section as well. The next thing they need to do is their rogues are in perfect coordination, calling out all of the suppression devices so that the guild and the entire raid can move through this as fast as possible. Focusing down the Talon Hatchers also above anything else because those are what wipe raids. Next, they'll move up on the left side, which there's a slight line here that if you hold on to this line, and you can't have anyone jump, by the way, if you hold on to this line, then you won't pull all of the whelps and all of the top section. So it's very, very tight, and you want everyone in your raid to stay together as tight as possible. This is kind of the scary section right here. If you move over right here, it'll aggro the top section. But you can see all of their suppression devices before them are all down. He actually gets suppressed there for a second, but that's not really too much of an issue. This leaves him slightly behind the rest of the raid, so he's trying to catch up, and he does get dazed as well, so that leaves him slightly behind as well. They are up to the top of the suppression device room with 45 seconds on their Burning Adrenaline, so they are blowing through this room, moving as fast as possible, which is great. And you can see all of the suppression devices, all of them, all the way ahead, are always clear. They never really get suppressed other than the unlucky RNG of ones coming back up. So their rogue team did incredible at min-maxing their suppression devices so that they could all move perfectly together as a team. Suppression room actually can kill a lot of time in a speed run, so you want to make sure that everything is clean and all of the suppression devices are down. And they have the other suppression device down by the boss before they pull the boss. Move in and instantly start attacking Broodlord Lashslayer. One quick thing about this boss that happens for them is that they have semi-non-optimal positioning of the boss. He's a little bit way too far to the right. A little bit way too far. All of the melee, the rogue should be positioned to the side here to try to get knocked into the wall and get pushed back in. And then the warriors on your first blast wave, you want to be positioned directly behind the boss so you can get knocked back and intercept in. It's faster. But after that, you want to be over to the side. Cooldown usage on this fight is usually when you get back in from a blast wave, but they kill this boss so fast that he didn't really need to, and also Fire Maw is more important to kill faster than any of the other bosses per se. The next thing is that they all use their Dense Dynamite on this pull and blow this Technician pack up as fast as possible. It's actually beautiful. And there's one thing that he actually mentions in his stream, and that's that they are going to actually kill one of these goblin packs now instead of saving the goblin packs for later and just dodging past all of them. They're going to pull this right one, I believe. And that's basically because they want to spread out the goblin packs just to conserve mana as much as possible. So it's kind of slightly more mana efficient, and it leaves you less room to accidentally walk into the pack. Ideally for them, they would double pull these and kill them all together, but Fire Maw padding changes the RNG of this entire raid. So this is the most RNG part of the entire raid. So here's the Fire Maw padding. Fire Maw's kind of facing the raid, which is a little bit scary initially. And then they get him into a good position. And you'll see that they use Death Wish on this fight and they actually blow up the boss. This is just pretty much a standard Fire Maw. Nobody needs to really put on Fire Res gear because you have the Uber's buff right here, and then you can just blow him up as fast as possible. Once Fire Maw is dead, they instantly move in to pull this next pack on the right, the one I was just talking about. They use an Ice Block pull, which is standard to group up all of the goblins, and for Horde, we use Ice Block pulls for this, and for Alliance, they use Paladin Bubble pulls. It's pretty much the same thing, it's just that we need mages for the Ice Block pull. Then, as they're pulling this, they pull in the next pull. So they're never wasting any time. They're always moving as fast as possible. They should have fapped here. Some people got their faps off. All of their tanks got their faps off. But all of the melee should have fapped as this pack was moving in. It's just kind of unfortunate for them. They lost out on a couple seconds because everybody got stunned. And they could have just used a fap earlier. Because you'll see that they do end up using faps, right? So they're not saving the potion cooldown, they just could have used faps a little bit earlier. As they move on, they ignore this pull here and they're going to go up straight up to the next pull here. But since they used this, or since they pulled this Dragonkin pack behind them, they don't need to do the goblins on the far left side up here, and you'll just notice that in a second. Everybody moves in, uses grenades again to blow up the technicians, which is just textbook and clean. They kill him as fast as possible, then cleave everything else down. So he's still actually using his BRE just because of cleave with BRE is insane. Next, they actually pull a second early here, possibly, but they instantly pull the next group and just everybody LOS so that they'll all come down. Easy and textbook, they just blow up the technicians again. And they have some people grenading here, which means they already have designated people who are going to nade on the pack before this and grenade on this pack. So that's another thing that's just preparation, just pure preparation. And you just saw they pulled the next pull back here again as well. The Warlock is still alive, which is a little bit scary, so health does get a little low for some people. They do need to blow up this Warlock as fast as possible, and they don't really have a crazy amount of range in the group to be able to do that as they're all sitting back LOSing. But it doesn't really cause any deaths for them. Sheep gets to 1 health, and so does Ice. But other than that, everyone lives, they both Ice Block and stay alive, which is just textbook for staying alive, which is great. Very, very nice, because they didn't need to Ice Block to pull these mobs, they pull them all back here. They're going to cleave down these mobs, and so they're going to have everybody run faps, run in, kill, and cleave down these mobs. Actually, somebody pulls aggro on this first one. Blindfolded does here. Oh, no, Regals does. Pulls aggro on this first one, and he actually ends up using a Flask of Petrification because he has the pot CD, so he can't lip. he uses a Flask of Petrification so that the mobs can't attack him anymore and he lives, which is such a clean play. So then he's going to have to repop his Flask of Titans after this pull. Flask of Petrification actually comes in handy for the next group of these Worm Guards, and I'll tell you about that in a second. But here they do the double dragon pack, which is now kind of standard for all speedruns, and this is where Progress killed him too, apparently. And so they actually have a very clean double dragon pull, where Ebonrock does a little bit of healing. As you can see, if you watch down here on his health bar, every now and then he will heal a little bit, but they do amazing cleave and just blow both of these up. This is the second fastest double dragon in history right now, and the only one faster is the Gussie run. Here, it could have been optimal, I think, to use their Recklessness because they're cleaving down both of these pulls. And instead of saving Recklessness, it could have been optimal for them all to Recklessness these packs. It's a little scarier because this is kind of a scarier fight to double pull these guys, but it could possibly save a little bit of time with them blowing these both up as fast as possible. So we'll see if they actually change that in further speed runs. Next, we actually see they have their person that's going to use Flask of Petrification to skip this pull has already moved up. Look, he's already moved up and pulled these Dragonkins or Worm Guards. So everybody's going to move in past this. For Alliance, you can have a Paladin bubble pull those over there and then use their Flask. So everybody gets past and gets on to Chromagus and they start pulling the boss instantly. The only little things here on Chromagus that I would like to note is that they kind of actually position Chromagus in a spot that they could have taken like one step forward and it would have been nicer for them to be able to LOS. And it's because usually you can LOS just right here, and especially with a melee heavy comp, that's really optimal. But you can see as all of their melee make the call to move into the actual corner, which is, it's so small of a min-max thing. And some people that didn't move into the corner, like Bad Jokes didn't move into the corner, or Ale, they actually tried to LOS right here and they got hit with that breath. So they pushed to try to kill the boss before the second breath. And usually that is optimal for a speed run. And usually if they're going to do that, they can start pulling the boss towards the opening of Neff's room. But they aren't doing enough damage on the boss yet to do that. And they're about to get the second breath. It's actually going to be time-lapse, and you can see that they go to run back in to not LOS it, to get hit by time-lapse, which is the usual strategy for time-lapse. But with the boss this low, you want all of your melee to not get hit by time-lapse, just so you can just blow them up. No matter who pulls aggro, you're just going to be able to blow them up. A couple people did still get hit by time-lapse, which ends up costing them a little bit of time because they have to wait for those people to get out of the stun to get into the room before they can start the next boss. Also, you can't really fully skip those Wormkins back there, but they're just going to pull them into this room as they start Neff. As you can see, they're coming into the room as they start Neff, and the second everybody's in the room, they start the boss encounter, which is just perfect timing. And so now they blow this up. They try to cleave all of these down. Ideally, they would cleave all of these down, but one of them is brown, I believe. We're going to find out in a second. So fighting these guys in the room just optimizes time because you still have to spend all of the time killing them, but you could spend all of the time while you're already in the Neff's room. And the reason for this is because everyone knows phase 1 of Neff it's like phase 1 of Razorgore, where you're just kind of sitting there. You'll kill the mobs so fast that it's boring and you wait for mobs to respawn. So you're literally just sitting there waiting for things to respawn. So doing this is much faster of a strategy because you actually cut down on all of the time spent killing that trash pack because you're just doing the same amount of time in the Neff room. From here, it's just kind of textbook. They just have to sit here and do all of the Neff trash, make sure everybody has their cloak on, but you just kind of sit here and do all of the Neff trash. And this is kind of where they realized that they can get the speed run. Salve actually realized that they could set the world record here. Skipping forward, Neff is going to cast the Shadow Flame, and they're not going to actually change their cloaks. You could technically change your cloak back if you drop combat to your normal DPS cloak. And they instantly start DPSing the boss also. Krilton gets a lot of threat initially, and so nobody's going to be able to catch up to him. And it's just a lot safer. And so in speedruns, you'll keep your cloak on because it's a lot safer in case something happens, especially like a bad rogue call. If just you get a bad rogue call at a bad time, there's no time to move out of a shadow flame. So you need to have your cloak on for something like that. You could technically vanish it, but you probably vanished a Breath on Chromagus. They get Priest Call here, which isn't that bad at all. It just makes healing a little harder, but they have 7 shamans, only 2 priests. It's not really a big deal. And they got Hunter Call first, I believe. So they got some really good RNG on the calls. The only scary one really would be Mage Call. So if somebody gets sheeped, especially the tank or some of your DPS gets sheeped, you try to dispel them as fast as possible, but that just didn't really happen. And there it is. That's the world record. 20 minutes and 25 seconds. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So clean. And there's tiny things they could have done, which is some cooldown usage. You'll see that Salve has his Death Wish back up here. So there's minimal things they could have done to min-max their cooldown usage, but this was faster than they've ever ran it before. So they didn't really expect to have shortened times between being able to use some of the cooldowns. And that's something that you need to really focus on. If you're doing speed runs, you absolutely have mapped out plans for every single pull in the entire raid. Guys, I don't know how much I can stress this. You might have seen it on my guild speedrun last week, where it took us an hour going over our spreadsheet of every single pull, where everybody has all of their exact assignments fully mapped out for the entirety of the raid. Literally every single pull and what you're doing, what cooldowns you're using. You use a lot of cooldowns on trash, especially like rogues. You'll use Blade Flurry on some of the Wormkin packs, so you're cleaving them down. And so you want to optimize everything. You're not going for boss damage here. On a speed run, you are absolutely not going for pure boss damage. You are going for how fast can your guild clear the entire raid. And this is a beautiful run for a Horde guild to get the new world record. And that's pretty much it, guys. That's all I really wanted to talk about with this BWL raid. I could break down the logs even further, so if you want to see something like that, just let me know. We can do that on stream or in a YouTube video as well. I just don't want this to be too long of a video. But this is how they played the entire run, and it was absolutely golden. This was beautiful. And with their buffs, look at this. They have 32 minutes on Ren buff, 31 minutes on Songflower left. So they go in after this and go into Molten Core and set the world record for Molten Core speed as well. And I'll make a shorter video of that, just a quick video going over how they set the new world record on Molten Core speed. But once again, guys, make sure to check out SalvDali on Twitch and anyone else in Onslaught. Congratulations to you guys with the insane run. This is absolutely incredible. It's great to see Horde on top, and you guys played pretty much flawlessly. And I'm just so hyped to see Horde on top. I'm very excited. This new world record is awesome. We're going to see if Progress or anybody else actually beats it in any of the next few runs, but congratulations to you guys. And once again, my name is Sarth, guys. If you like this sort of content, technically it's not really me going over my own video as well, but if you like it, please like and subscribe. I'll be going over a video on improved exposed armor for rogues coming up in a couple days. As always, you can check me out on Twitch, twitch.tv/Sarth, or hit me up in the Discord channel, which is also in the description. And if you have any questions or you want me to go over your logs, I do a lot of log reviews, parse reviews, VOD reviews, stuff like that. Other than that, man, once again, congratulations to Onslaught, and I will catch you guys all on the next one.